We come now to the second of our major prophets, Jeremiah. Because he occupies what is now to us a very familiar time period, that leading up to the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem and the exile, we will probably feel that thematically we have been here before. But Jeremiah is unique in some ways. We get much more of a sense of the man himself, who had so many struggles with those who opposed and disbelieved him. He has doubts and fears and complaints. Unlike Isaiah, which has large, glorious sections of hope and promise, Jeremiah is largely doom and gloom. However, there are some particular important moments of hope in the second half of the book, and it is Jeremiah's word that God will make a new covenant with his people that Jesus refers to at the Last Supper. Jeremiah, like Isaiah, is crucial for understanding what God achieved through Jesus. Jeremiah preached for 40 years from 627 BC, which is the 13th year of Josiah's reign, to 587 BC, when Babylon captured Jerusalem. The mention of the 5th month refers to the destruction of the temple. The book divides in two, chapters 1 to 25 and then 26 to 52. Jeremiah's family and background are mentioned, which is unusual, and only Amos has a similar note. Jeremiah is not from Jerusalem, and the priests of Anathoth may be those descended from Abiathar, whom Solomon banished in 1 Kings 2, and who was himself a descendant of Eli. Jeremiah, then, is not from the priestly Jerusalem circle, unlike his younger contemporary Ezekiel. The book begins with an amazing account of Jeremiah's prophetic commission. The Lord reveals to him that he has been chosen even before his birth. He was appointed in utero to be a prophet to the nations. Jeremiah is a young lad at this point, in his apprenticeship or some other kind of assisting role. Like Moses, he expresses his inadequacy and is reluctant to take up his commission. But God reassures him and promises his continual presence and deliverance. Then, in a sort of ceremony, God touches his mouth to put his words in it. This is similar to Isaiah's commission in Isaiah 6, where an angel purifies his lips by touching them with a live coal from the heavenly altar. As we shall see, Ezekiel will be installed as prophet when he is given a scroll to eat. God says with this gesture, "See, I have put words in your mouth." Jeremiah need not worry about his rhetorical skill. God will take care of that. In Exodus 4, God tells Moses that he will be with his mouth. The scope of Jeremiah's commission is incredible. In verse 10, the Lord says, "See, today I appoint you over nations and over kingdoms, to pluck up and to pull down, to destroy and overthrow, to build and to plant." Jeremiah must have wondered at those words when later on in his difficult ministry he faced so much opposition. There is also a note of promise in this commission, to build and to plant. Jeremiah will struggle to warn people about the oncoming storm, but there is something coming afterwards. Two visions are given to Jeremiah which explain his ministry. He is shown the branch of an almond tree. The word for almond is shaked, but when God says he is watching over his word to perform it, the word he uses for watching is shoked, the same spelling as for almond, but with only a change of one vowel. It is a play on words, but if the image of the almond branch is itself significant, it is not spelt out how. This particular word for watching can mean waiting for the time to act. Jeremiah is being prepared for something God has planned. The second vision explains, or at least gives a strong flavour of what that is. The boiling pot, tilting away from the north, signifies a torrent of boiling liquid about to thunder southwards to Judea. The imagery is of something intense which has been growing in heat for some time, but is now on the brink of being unleashed, which will be widespread and irresistible in its devastation. The Lord explains that this represents the judgment he will bring on Jerusalem because they have forsaken the Lord and gone after idols. It will be Jeremiah's role to tell them whatever God tells him. But there is a strong warning of the trouble Jeremiah will face, though God will fortify him, be with him, and deliver him. Chapter 2 contains the word of the Lord for Jerusalem. It is a word of accusation. The Lord begins by referring to Israel as his bride, which immediately establishes the emotional freight of what is to follow. He reminisces about the early times in the marriage, which refers to the Exodus and wanderings through the wilderness. Then the accusation begins. He asks in verse 5, "What wrong did your ancestors find in me that they went far from me?" It is the rhetorical question of a betrayed and bewildered husband. Noteworthy is the comment that they went after worthless things and so became worthless themselves. You become what you worship. God asks another rhetorical question in verse 11. Has a nation changed its gods? Israel is unique in her sin. The other nations, even though they worship idols which are nothing, are nonetheless consistent in their foolishness. But Israel has done what even they would not do, and they did it with the real God. Another rhetorical question comes in verse 14. Is Israel a slave? The accusation now is political, though it goes hand in hand with idolatry. By looking to Egypt on the one hand and Assyria on the other, they have forsaken God. Assyria will be no help, and Egypt will plunder and subjugate them. Both will shame them, as he will say in verse 36. More rhetorical questions come in verses 28 to 32. The accusations then take on a more distasteful aspect, as Israel's unfaithfulness is characterized as whoring, and even figured as a camel in heat running around in the desert. It is language meant to debase and humiliate, for that is what Israel has done, and so shamed and betrayed God. Worth noting as well in verse 34 is the accusation of injustice and murder. The poor have been murdered, even though they were not caught in the act of stealing, which would otherwise have been justification for lethal force. Thus, in every way, Israel has behaved appallingly. This word of judgment will continue on into the beginning of chapter 3.